Hello, person I certainly don't know but who I know appreciates a beautiful demon MILF over 1,000 years old. And to complete the combo she also has wings and horns. Yes, this MILF exists, and she is here in this manga, whose name is Nagai wa Kanit Marau to Akuma wa Shokan Shidakido, Kawakitanode Kekken Shimashida. What a long name, my god. That said, let's get to the summary. Opening his eyes after a long time, a girl who calls herself Devil asks the young man in front of her what his wish is, and she will take something in return regardless of what it is. But the boy said nothing, which made her think he was scared to death. However, the boy was simply enchanted by her beauty, and then he asks her to marry him. Going back a few years, Theo, the boy from before, lived with an elderly couple after being abandoned by his parents. They took care of him as if he were their own grandson. However, the elderly couple did not live to see Theo become an adult. To live in this world, strength is necessary. Theo, now 14 years old, needed money, so he joined the mercenary guild, which hunted monsters. But since he couldn't use swords, magic, or even hunt weaker monsters, he worked as a transporter for the group. And because he was weak, people always insulted him just like his grandparents. And in search of becoming stronger, he went after books to try to learn magic. Until, from within one of the books, a page falls out. It informed how to perform a devil summoning ritual. But Theo didn't even know what a devil was, so he began to read more about it. However, all the books stated that the devil was evil, until he read something stating that he could make a wish to the devil. This excited him because he wanted to wish to become strong. And so he follows the steps for the ritual and successfully performs it. Watching her, he can only think how angelic she is, and making his wish, he quickly asks her to marry him. Confused, she wonders if that boy is an idiot. She is the devil. Humans only seek to avoid her as much as possible. But unable to stand her silence any longer, he says that he fell in love at first sight, but she just tells him to stop lying. However, he says he never lies because he promised his grandpa. By affirming himself this way, she says she needs to then check inside his heart. And he really wasn't lying. He fell in love with every detail of her. Looking at all this, she just wonders what's wrong with this boy. And then she says that it's the first time she's ever been so adored by someone. That every human just tried to run away from her after she fulfilled their wish. But this boy is different. He wants to marry her, even though she's the devil. All of this leaves her completely confused. Noticing that this seemed like an impossible wish, she bursts into tears. But looking at all this, she just wonders why such a lovely person had to appear just now. And then she says no, that there's no wish that cannot be granted. And looking at him again, she says the contract will be established, and she will marry him, and so a new couple is born. Now, at the mercenary guild, the receptionist wonders if Theo won't come today again. That's when she hears Theo's voice, but next to him now is someone she doesn't know. And then we go back before they went there. Both have been silent for many minutes, and Theo just wonders if it's a dream that he married such a wonderful woman. And when they were about to speak, they end up not being able to. She wonders why she feels so moved by a man who doesn't seem to have any power. And then he asks, "What's your name?" She says her name is Helvi. And noticing he was staring at her, she becomes embarrassed again. And when he was about to introduce himself, she quickly says she already knows his name. And not only that, but also various other information about him. Hearing this, he just says it's incredible, and begins to reflect on it, that he was raised by an elderly couple, and that now he has to live alone in this house, and that he already caught the names and faces of the scoundrels who insulted him. Thinking that now it's an insult to him, it will also be a direct insult to her, his wife. But when he calls her wife, she quickly becomes embarrassed again. Noticing she seemed agitated, he asks what's wrong. But she just asks if he shouldn't be somewhere at this time, which reminds him that he needs to go to the guild, and then rushes to get ready. And then he asks if she wants to go with him. She says yes, and he says she will end up attracting a lot of attention because of her appearance. In that, she quickly changes her look. He, once again, was amazed by his wife, and then they were already leaving, until he notices that she still hasn't called him by his name once, and he asks for it. She thinks that, in such a short period of time, she wouldn't be able to. But realizing he was getting sad, she calls him by his name. After the cute moment, they head to the guild. On the way, they go hand in hand, and she wonders how his hand can be softer than hers, and then they arrive at the guild. Entering, she quickly looks for where the reception is, and then she finds the one who used to insult Theo, and already affirms to herself that if they try to pull something, but before completing her reasoning, Theo calls her, and they go to reception. They greet each other, and then the receptionist asks who that woman with him would be. She thinks she's known him for 2 years, but she's never seen this woman before. And then Helvi introduces herself. She says her name is Helvi, and she's Theo's wife. This clearly surprises everyone. And she adds, saying that her parents were acquaintances of Theo's grandparents, and they made them engaged. Hearing this, Fiore, the receptionist, says he should have told her this before, but Helvi says she didn't even remember that old promise anymore. So Helvi and Fiora start getting along great, which makes Theo happy. Because it was Fiore who always took care of him, it's then that, out of nowhere, the one who insulted him all the time appears and starts nagging as always. Coming closer, one of them then asks Theo to lend his wife to them. But Helvi can hear everything. After all, she is the devil. And for the first time in a long time, she feels thirsty for blood. And she asks herself if this is because these insolents insulted her beloved Theo. But Theo quickly refuses the request of the thugs, and affirms that Helvi is his wife and he will never give her to anyone. Furious, he was about to hit Theo, but suddenly his arm broke. After seeing Theo's courage, Helvi hugs him, and says he once again won her heart. And unable to resist her temptations anymore, she was almost kissing Theo. However, she is interrupted by the screams of the one whose arm had been broken. He says he knows she did it and she's gonna pay for it, but just with a look, she warns him that if he tries anything again, she'll kill him right there. Having understood the message, he runs away, and his companions follow him. With that settled, Theo thanks his wife, who was irritated because she was interrupted when she was about to kiss him. However, she soon calms down because now they are a couple, and they will have plenty of chances to do that. From afar, Fiore reveals to us that she felt something strange when she saw that almost kiss. With the problems over, Theo looks for a mission, and asks for the easiest one. But Fiore says there won't be anything like that today. Around Helvi, several women ask about when they met, their best moments, etc. And then Theo asks if there are other missions. Fiore says there are, but he wouldn't be able to do them alone. Hearing this, Helvi approaches and says she won't allow him to do a mission alone, but he says he doesn't want to expose her to danger. This makes her happy, but she soon warns that she is a supreme being, and asks if there's any problem with her going along, but Fiore says there isn't. However, the reward would be divided between them. Helvi says that's not a problem because they are a couple, and then Fiore asks which mission she will choose, and Helvi says she wants the one that can be done in a day, and that is the most difficult. Fiore says that's madness with just the two of them, but Helvi asks what the mission is. She then says it's to subdue a chimera that inhabits a cave in the forest. Theo says they shouldn't go because that's a high-level monster, but hearing this, she just asks if that's really the most difficult monster, so she says they'll do that mission anyway. She takes Theo's hand, and he asks if they're really going, but to his question, she just says it's okay because she's a supreme being. We are then told a story from the past. Once the world was inhabited by monsters, and there were few humans. Over time, humans gained something called intellect, and that same intellect was responsible for summoning the devil. The human who asked for this wished for her to kill all the powerful monsters, so that this world would become a peaceful place to live. A few days passed, and practically all the monsters were eradicated. They were all exterminated by a particular demon, and facing the chimera was the one responsible for that act. Theo, realizing that the creature was still asleep, calls Helvi to leave while they can, but Helvi ignores him and launches her killing intent at the creature, which wakes up in despair and shakes the cave they were in. Theo almost falls because of it, but Helvi grabs him and thinks that now she could do what she was interrupted from doing at the guild. However, she soon gives up because this is not the appropriate environment. Theo, noticing that the chimera was acting strangely, asks what she did. Helvi says she just used her killing intent and then trapped the creature in a barrier so it wouldn't escape. Theo says she must be really powerful since a legendary creature is trying to flee from her, and with just a wave of her hand, she decapitates the monster. And if that wasn't enough, she even took care not to spill a drop of blood. Theo says that was unbelievable, but she just says it was too easy for her. And out of nowhere, she remembers she hasn't eaten anything yet, but Theo says he can cook, and asks if there's something specific she would like. She says she likes meat, so he asks what she'd like for dessert. She then thinks she wants him, but quickly restrains herself, saying there's no need to rush. They both think they should head back, and so they take the parts of the monster. Arriving at the gate, the guards saw a creature in the distance, but when they approached, they saw there was also a man and a woman holding hands, and they confined them to a separate room. Theo was used to being treated unfairly, so he remained quiet. But Helvi has no patience for it, and soon becomes angry because she can't even give Theo some affection. Then a new guard arrives, and arrogantly says he has some questions for them. Unable to bear this situation any longer, Helvi makes all the guards kneel by manipulating gravity, and says they should be thankful she only made them kneel after making them wait for hours, and so she frees them, and asks if he wants to speak kneeling, or go fetch a chair. The man quickly orders them to bring a chair, Seated, the man says he was confused by the information he had received and apologizes, introducing himself as Loro, commander of the army, and then says he heard rumors about Theo helping the soldiers. He quickly says it's not quite like that, as he could get into trouble for interference. However, the commander quickly says he has no intention of punishing him, and that he will even give him some trusted guards. Considering that he will punish the guards in his place, he says it's his fault for insisting on taking that mission. Seeing this, the commander realizes the boy has some backbone, and Helvi just finds him adorable. But then the commander says that won't be their punishment, that the punishment will be something else. And then he gets straight to the point and says that the creature they brought seems to be a chimera. Helvi quickly says that's obvious, and then he asks if she was the one who defeated it. Without hesitation and proudly, she responds that it was indeed her. The commander soon remembers that the chimera took only one blow, and that it probably wasn't even a battle, and then he recalls that pressure from moments ago. She didn't even use a fraction of her power in that. He wonders, but setting aside his doubts, he thanks her, and says she will be rewarded with a medal. Upon hearing this, Theo is happy for her. However, she refuses the reward, and explains that this kind of medal would only be a problem, as they could end up calling her for future troubles, and then she remembers that, in the past it was also like this. A king would give you a medal for your heroism, but the instant you refused to help, you would be hunted down as a traitor. And then she says that neither she nor Theo need anything. The commander accepts, and says he will keep it a secret if that's what they wish. Hurriedly, Helvi asks if they're done there, as she wants to leave right away. As they leave the room, Helvi says she wants a reward from Theo instead of the medal, and asks him to make the homemade meal he promised her. He agrees and says he'll make the best food ever. Back home, now she tries his food and says it was delicious. Theo says he's happy to hear that, and for the first time Helvi smiles like never before. Theo joins her at the table and says she is the most beautiful woman there is, which leaves her completely embarrassed. Theo had no words to express how much he admired her, so he just said what he thought. Helvi, who knew everything that went on in his heart, was easily affected by his genuine thoughts. After this comes a brief silence, and then laughter. They wash the dishes and then go to rest. Theo says he ended up tired, even though he didn't do anything against the chimera, and Helvi offers him a massage and asks him to lie face down. She climbs onto his back and asks if she's heavy, but he says it's fine. She then reveals to us that she was using magic to become lighter, and she would love to see Theo's nervous face with this situation. She ended up in a difficult situation, but due to the delay in the massage, he asks if she's not going to continue. This brings her back to reality, and she says she's about to start. She begins, and he makes some strange sounds. This makes her wonder if he wants her to attack him. Like a wolf approaching a rabbit, she wonders why something so defenseless doesn't worry about sleeping in front of her. Caught in this dilemma, she wonders if she can or cannot attack him. And somehow, Theo manages to turn around and face her. Almost unable to resist anymore, she wonders what kind of reaction he would have if she kissed him there. Helvi tries to calm down, but she is already at her limit, and when she was almost completely falling, Fiore appears and sees Helvi and Theo, but Helvi looks at her as if nothing was happening, and Fiore asks what was going on. Helvi says she was just massaging Theo, but Fiore asks her how she was doing that in that position, and Helvi, proudly, admits that she wanted to attack Theo while he was sleeping. Fiore says she shouldn't say that so naturally, and asks why she was doing that while he's sleeping. But as if she was doing nothing wrong, but rather admirable, she says she does it simply because it's Theo. Noticing Fiore reactions, she quickly asks if she has been with a man before. She answers yes, and Helvi says she should then understand the desire to attack her loved one while he sleeps. But Fiore says she doesn't know about that. However, while she was talking, Helvi kept massaging Theo. That is, until she felt something sharp in her butt, which makes her jump quickly to Fiore's side. And she soon realizes that Helvi, who was doing those naughty things, probably has never done anything like that before. Some time passes, and then Helvi decides to wake up Theo and tells him it's already night. He gets up in a panic, and she says he slept all day. He finds it strange because he would usually be taking missions around this time. She then says Fiore was there today, so she reveals that her visits are quite frequent, always after a night of work. But Helvi says she came there because they hadn't reported the completion of the mission they had taken. He says he just remembered now, and that he will apologize later. And Helvi says Fiore will be coming soon, and she was counting on Theo to make dinner. He agrees, and she asks if he needs anything. He asks for some vegetables, and she says it's an easy task. Theo then asks what Helvi and Fiore talked about. She says they only have Theo as a common topic with Fiore, so they only talked about him. And she reveals that she asked what they thought of him. She says everyone likes Theo, and he says he's happy to hear that. However, an unease arises in Helvi's chest, and this reminds her that Fiore had said that the only man's house she entered was Theo's. She connects the dots and soon realizes that Fiore wants that, but Helvi quickly asserts that she won't give Theo to anyone. Noticing her serious expression, he asks if everything is alright, but she says yes. And then they continue to tidy up, and then Fiore arrives. Theo goes to answer the door and apologizes for not reporting his mission. But she says it's okay, and rumors of him killing the Chimera are spreading. Helvi then appears from behind and says she couldn't possibly lose to that little thing. Calling the Chimera a little thing confuses Fiore, but that's because she doesn't know about Helvi's strength, which simply turned the hunter into the hunted. Theo calls her to come in and have dinner soon, but Helvi says she needs to leave quickly. She let it go in the morning, but says now it's time to clean up the trash. She then sets out in search of a certain group of hunters, the ones who were lurking around Theo's house, as they had heard that he had acquired a wife of unprecedented beauty. They planned to kidnap her. One of the thugs asks another who the leader of the group is, and he replies that it's Carl. This is the same one from the beginning who had his arm broken. Hearing this, he says it's a shame he didn't come today, and the bald one remembers Carl's condition. He didn't come just because he was injured, but because he was traumatized. Unable to wait any longer, some of them already want to go to Theo's house right away, as they saw Fiore had just entered there. And as they were already going, Helvi appears and tells them to shut up. They think she helped them by showing up like that, but she says she's out of time and teleports them somewhere else. Looking around, they soon panic because Helvi says that's the Chimera's den. But one of them quickly tells them to calm down because the Chimera was killed today, and then Helvi says she was the one who killed it. And as it seems they didn't hear, she repeats, she killed the Chimera. They say they don't believe it, however, she says she doesn't care. And she strikes with her hand, decapitating them all in seconds, leaving only one. And then she approaches him and says she left him because he said, whoever kills Theo gets his woman. And she adds, saying that upon hearing those words, she didn't think it would anger her so much, and that for him she will show a different kind of hell. Already back at Theo's house, he greets her, saying he already prepared dinner with Fiore, and then they'll eat. She tastes it and says it's delicious, that he's a true master in the kitchen. This makes him release a genuine smile, which leaves Fiore feeling awkward, thinking he's extremely adorable, and it should be illegal to smile like that. But looking at Helvi, she sees that she doesn't even seem to have noticed it. But then she hears a voice in her head, saying that it's not true, and that he's clearly adorable. This makes her choke on her food. Helvi asks what's wrong, but she says it was nothing and goes back to eating. And she begins to think if it was Helvi's voice in her head or just her imagination. However, Helvi soon speaks again in her head and says that it's not her imagination. Fiore asks if she can do that too, and Helvi says yes, because she's omnipresent. And while to Theo they were eating in silence, they were actually talking telepathically. They then finish eating, and Theo asks what Fiore is going to do now, as it's quite late. She thinks about it and reveals that normally she would stay there, as she has stayed several times before, but she gets nervous and can't sleep until she sees Theo. But she thinks that now wouldn't be the case, since he has someone else with him. Helvi, as if reading her mind, says she'll escort Fiore home. Theo says he'll come along, but Helvi asks him to stay and clean up. He agrees, and the two of them leave. On the way, Fiore says she didn't know Theo had a fiancé, and that she used to stay at his house all the time before. But Helvi says she already knows that. This shocks Fiore and she apologizes. However, Helvi just laughs and says it's okay, as long as it's her. Fiore then says she didn't think she would let another woman stay at Theo's house. However, Helvi quickly says she doesn't show mercy, but only to those who mess with Theo, and that she should already know that. And then she adds, saying that Fiore is friendly with Theo, and asks her to continue being so. Fiore agrees and thanks her, but Helvi quickly warns that she is Theo's woman, and if she makes any move, they arrive at a place near Fiore's house, and she says that's good enough. And then Fiore asks if she can stay at Theo's house from now on, then why couldn't she stay tonight? And Helvi just laughs and says that Fiore still hasn't understood. Helvi says they got married today, which means, but Fiore says she didn't understand what it means, and Helvi calls her a child for that. And then she explains that if they got married today, today will be that night. And furthermore, that one of those nights should not be interrupted. This fills Fiore's head with thoughts and makes her think that she really shouldn't have stayed tonight. With that explained, Helvi says that's the reason, and Fiore agrees, saying it's okay. And she starts to say that when they see each other tomorrow, she'll be a different woman. But Fiore says they should have fun, saying she'll see her tomorrow. Helvi leaves. Arriving home, she sees that Theo is still cleaning up. She then approaches him from behind and touches his face, but quickly lets go and apologizes, realizing that taking the initiative won't be easy. Ending there, Theo says he'll take a bath first, and Helvi, now alone, thinks she'll have to break the ice on the first night, and she starts to remember what she said to Fiore about this being the first night. and that they would both have their first time together. However, she soon wonders if it would be the same for Theo. So she remembers that she has all the information about Theo due to the contract, and searches her memories. And she is relieved, because this would also be Theo's first time. But there's a problem, because Theo is the kind of person who probably doesn't even know what a first time is, and she starts to think that she knows how it works, but she also has no experience at all. But then she decides, and as soon as Theo appears, she says they're going to study. She tells him to sit down, and he asks what they're going to study, and she starts to think about how to start this. And then, where do babies come from? Theo feels embarrassed, and she finds this reaction adorable. And she soon thinks, does he know then? But he says babies come from storks, who bring babies when a boy and a girl kiss. And when she looks at him, he avoids looking at her lips, embarrassed. But then she says that babies don't come from a kiss, and he asks where they come from then. She sits next to him and tries to figure out how to say this to him, now that they're married. And she starts to explain everything to him. But looking at his reactions, Helvi can barely control herself from attacking him. But she starts to take deep breaths and calms down. She doesn't need to rush, since they'll live together for many years. And she thinks she can't have her first time with someone she just met, but it will happen at some point. And then she goes to take a bath and asks him to try to recover. After explaining to Theo how babies are made, Helvi went to the bathroom to take a bath. Being a demon, Helvi doesn't need baths since she doesn't get dirty. However, she enjoys them. She doesn't need to remove her clothes either, as she can make them disappear with a snap of her fingers. Doing so, she now relaxes in the bath. She thinks that as long as they have even a little chemistry, she can be the happiest woman in the world. But what she really wants is for them to bathe together. Outside, Theo fantasizes about how she must be now. As she gets out of the bathtub, she realizes it's time to go to bed. With a snap of her fingers, she puts on an outfit to tease Theo, a premeditated crime. Once she's ready, she goes to find Theo, who, upon seeing her, becomes extremely embarrassed and rushes off to take a bath himself. However, Helvi saw something she couldn't believe. Her charms worked, and Theo was thinking about her in the way she wanted. Throwing herself onto the couch, she wonders if she can wait or if she'll attack him right now. In the end, she waits, and then Theo comes out of the bath. When she sees him, she can't hold back anymore and goes to him. Holding his shoulder, she asks him to give her a kiss. He doesn't understand at first but soon catches on to her request. As she continues advancing toward Theo, he tries to ask if babies really don't come from kisses or storks, and she confirms they don't, coming even closer. As they face each other, she thinks that if the receptionist were there, she would certainly think this is harassment. Without backing down, she advances and actually kisses him. Afterward, she thinks she got very excited but still isn't satisfied. Telling him to breathe through his nose, she kisses him again, but this time it's more intense. Hold on, police, I'm just narrating the events of a story, and both characters are over 1,000 years old. After a few minutes, they stop and Helvi realizes he loved it and is ready for round 2. She just needs to control herself to not go crazy, she tells herself. Teasing him, she asks what he thought of the kiss, and he says it was very good. Realizing it's better to stop there, or she won't be able to contain herself, she suggests they go to sleep since they have to work tomorrow. As she is about to leave, Theo holds her and apologizes for groping her while they were kissing. This is enough to make her come back and kiss him again. Afterward, she asks if that was enough, but he asks for one more time. The next day, he even wakes up late, but not because anything more happened that night, at least not yet. Anyway, he hurries to prepare breakfast, and while doing so, he remembers what happened the previous night. He gets so lost in thought that he cuts himself with the knife, something that has never happened before. He becomes so immersed in his thoughts that time flies, and Helvi wakes up before he finishes. He noticed that she was in her demon form and asked why, but she said she didn't know, she just woke up like that today. Realizing he was staring a lot, she asked if he perhaps liked her wings and horns. This made him embarrassed, but he said it's not just that he likes her wings or horns, but rather that she looks absolutely beautiful like that. We must admit that even though he might look like a girl, he's quite manly. So she asked if he would like her to stay like this whenever they're alone, and Theo said yes. Accommodating her husband's wishes, she agreed to do as he desired. He thanked her, and she was happy with his request. After that, there was a moment of silence between them, but Helvi noticed he was looking at her first thing in the morning. In Theo's mind, he confirmed what she suspected, that he loved the idea of her staying in this form whenever they're alone. Breaking the silence, Helvi asked if Theo had cut his finger. He said he had forgotten about it and would put a bandage on later, but Helvi said it wasn't necessary, took his injured finger, and used her miraculous saliva to heal it. After that, the cut on his finger disappeared, and Helvi said she had healed it. He looked at it and thought it would be a waste to just clean it, and Helvi said he was free to suck it. In the end, she grabbed a towel and cleaned his finger. However, she soon said that as a sign of gratitude for healing his cut, she would like something. A kiss first thing in the morning is what she desired. Bowing a little, she asked for her morning kiss. Nervous but eager, he kissed her but ended up kissing the tip of her nose. He explained that he missed, but she said it was okay and thanked him anyway. He felt a bit down for missing, so Helvi, still unsatisfied, kissed him and said she would like it to be like that next time. They then finished breakfast and were on their way to the guild when Theo called out to Helvi. She turned towards him and was surprised with a stolen kiss from Theo. He asked how it was and if he did it well, but she didn't know how to react, as she was completely caught off guard, not expecting to be attacked so quickly. In the end, because of this, they arrived late at the guild. When they arrived, Theo greeted Fiora, but Helvi was too embarrassed to say anything. Fiora knew something had happened because they were late and Helvi's reaction. But then Theo asked for a mission, and Fiora snapped back to reality and quickly went to check. After handing Theo the missions to review, Fiora tried to start a conversation with Helvi via telepathy, hoping she was reading her mind at that moment. Helvi responded, and Fiora asked how the previous night went, hinting at whether they had their first night together. She tried to ask without directly asking, but Helvi pretended not to understand. Fiora began to panic, saying she knew what she was talking about, and then Helvi said that what she thought didn't happen. She explained that Theo had no knowledge about how to make babies, so it didn't happen. Fiora then asked if Helvi would like to do that with Theo, and proudly, she said yes and would do it right now if she could, and she should be admired for not attacking him last night. Fiora said she shouldn't look so proud, but Helvi said they at least kissed a lot last night. This was enough to make Fiora go crazy with ideas. The other receptionists then arrived to talk to Helvi, and Fiora ends up revealing that she told them that Theo had his first time last night, and then they drag Helvi to ask about everything. Theo goes to Fiora and asks what they could want with Helvi, but she says she doesn't know either. Sometime later, Helvi returns exhausted, thinking that was the first time she was cornered by creatures much weaker than her. However, Theo makes her fatigue disappear. He asks what they were talking about, but she says it was just girl talk and he wouldn't understand. She then reveals to us that she ended up telling everything in detail to the girls, and now feels like strange looks are on her. Because she focused on remembering in detail what happened yesterday, she now feels like kissing him soon. As she stares at him, he asks what the problem is, but she says it's nothing. However, she finds herself in danger, thinking she won't be able to calm down if she doesn't kiss him soon. She spends a long time just fantasizing about it, and now wants to do it for hours. Theo, unaware of what awaits him later, says he found a mission for them. She reads it and realizes it's just an herb collection mission, and says he could have taken one to hunt monsters no matter how difficult it seemed, but he just says that wouldn't be easy for him, and explains that this was a request made exclusively for him. Listening to the conversation, Fiora explains that these types of requests are usually directed at Theo. She also explains that this is delicate work, as it requires careful collection of both leaves and roots. Because of this, many of the guild's mercenaries, who are pure muscle, don't have the ability for this work. So Helvi asks if being something Theo can do, then it's safe. Fiora affirms that yes, because there's no need to fight monsters. However, he needs to leave the city, so there's a chance monsters will appear. Theo tells Helvi that he tries to avoid being detected, but even if he is, the monsters are weak, so he can just flee. And after all that explanation, Helvi just says that even if he is found this time, he won't need to flee. After all, she'll go with him as his wife and protector. Because she said that the admiration glow from the girls before only increases and tries to ignore it. As the conversation unfolds, Fiora asks if then she should consider this mission as accepted, and Theo says yes. Wishing them a good trip, Helvi takes Theo's hand and says she doesn't need to worry about him. After all, she's the strongest of them all. Already out of the city, they actually just encountered monsters, but Helvi split the monster in two quickly. This wasn't the first of the day, and that's not normal. The cause of this was Helvi, or more precisely, her defeating the legendary chimera. This made the monsters run to the forest to hide, but in a few days it should return to normal. Helvi asks if he's finished collecting the herbs, and he says just a little. She then crouches down, and says that this is her first time collecting herbs with someone, and then gets closer, hugs him, and says that in this place, they won't be seen, so they can flirt as they please now. Theo says that, still, monsters could appear, but she says there are no monsters nearby now, she's sure. And now, because she talked too much about what happened the night before to the girls, she can't hold back anymore. That's why she asks Theo to look at her, and then they kiss. He collected the herbs more efficiently than usual, but it also took longer than usual. They return to the city already at night and walk to the guild. But because he's very embarrassed and looking down, he almost bumps into others if Helvi didn't pull him back. She warns that it's dangerous to walk like that, and he agrees. But when he speaks, she says that talking while there tickles. She finds his reaction cute and just wants to keep him quiet like that. But since her goal is not to make a spectacle and there are many people there, she pushes Theo away and suggests they hurry to report that the mission is complete, and only then does he regain his senses. But before they set off, Helvi whispers in his ear that when they get home, he'll be able to touch her as much as he wants. Embarrassed, he says that wasn't exactly what he wanted, and she smiles satisfied. And outside the city, on a nearby cliff, new figures appear and can't wait to meet Theo. Arriving at the guild, Fiora asks if Theo was okay, because he was as red as a tomato. He says she shouldn't ask about it, and then reports on the completion of the mission. With that done, they were already going home, until two people show up, and looking at them, Helvi realizes they are a warrior of light and a sorceress. Seeing Theo, the warrior runs up to him and greets him along with the mage. She asks if he remembers them, and he says yes, calling her Gina, and then greets the mage, calling her Ziria. They are happy he recognizes them, and then Gina says he hasn't changed at all, still a shorty. And then she was about to pat his head, until Helvi appears and grabs her arm before reaching him. She says it would be worrying if she touched him without his permission. And Gina was perplexed by this strength, as she is a member of an extremely powerful class, and in a strength competition, she shouldn't lose to anyone. However, at this moment she can't move. She thinks that if she used not only the strength of her arm to break free, maybe she could do something, but she doesn't want to show such a serious look in front of Theo. Helvi then begins to speak, and says that she must be Gina Adamalo, and the other Ziria Silesia, and then introduces herself as Helvi, Theo Asper's wife. The girls are in shock, but Theo confirms it's true, he got married. The mage notes that she must really value her relationship with Theo, to not even let them touch him. And Gina, who is still stuck, asks Helvi to let her go. She releases her, but warns that, starting now, the next time she tries to pat Theo's head, she must get his permission first. Gina doesn't say anything, but asks if Helvi is powerful. And to this question, she says yes, she is the most powerful. Someone incomparable in this world. She gets nervous, but still asks if she isn't just boasting. But Helvi says no, and that it's only the truth. Not understanding anything, Ziria asks what's wrong with Gina. So she whispers quietly in her ear that Helvi is super strong and hasn't been able to free her arm until now. She can hardly believe her partner lost in strength. So she asks if Helvi is a hand-to-hand fighter like Gina. But Helvi says she doesn't like fighting with fists. Her real strength lies in magic. This leaves Gina perplexed, and then, after a silence, Gina says that if that's the case, she would like to fight her. But Helvi has no interest in that at all. They try to convince her, but Theo says they shouldn't do that. But Ziria says he can relax, as they won't hurt his wife. However, he says he didn't mean that, but rather that he thinks the two of them won't be able to defeat Helvi. Hearing this, they are puzzled and ask if Theo knows how strong they are. But even this makes Gina think about it. She becomes more motivated than before, and not only she, but the mage too. Theo asks what Helvi intends to do about it, but she says she has no problem with it because she's curious about how strong people in this world are. And before they go to fight, Gina asks to pat Theo's head. She says it's okay, and then Gina starts to pat Theo's head after a long time without doing it. But not satisfied, she asks if she can hug him, and Helvi says no. Gina asks if Ziria wants to play with Theo too, and she says she wants to give him a lap pillow, but Helvi says that can't happen. However, if they win, she'll allow it, and so they become more motivated. But not at all worried, Helvi just thinks a lap pillow is an interesting idea, and she'll try to do it with him after this battle is over and they return home. And without even noticing, Theo has been turned into a prize. Hearing everything, Fiora just asks them to go fight away from the guild, and so they do. They go to a remote forest, but it was very dark. However, the girls say they're used to the dark due to their many adventures, and ask if Helvi will be okay. But, to their surprise, Helvi says she can see as well as if it were daytime. But, as Theo will be the spectator and supporter, she has to make sure he can watch them clearly. And, with a snap of her fingers, a huge luminous ball is created floating above their heads. Helvi asks if this is better, and Theo says yes and thanks her, which puts them in a mood that makes the girls think they're flirting. And not wanting to be left out, the mage asks if she would like her to also make a light ball, as it must not be easy to maintain one that size for long. And wasting no time, the warrior agrees and says that if they're going to fight, it has to be fair. For them, Helvi shouldn't be able to hold that ball for more than 10 minutes while fighting. However, Helvi says she'll be fine, as this type of magic is very easy for her to become a kind of disadvantage. And if they want, she can make another 100 of those. Furious, Gina warns Helvi not to underestimate them. However, she laughs and says she shouldn't be fooled, as she's only acting based on the facts. But interrupting them, Ziria says it's better to fight than to talk to show their skills, and thus an agreement is reached. Suddenly Helvi calls Theo and tells him to stay away. But before moving away, she kisses him and says she will definitely win now. The girls are completely embarrassed watching this, but the mage was even more so than Gina. After finishing the conversation with Theo, Helvi joins the girls again. Curious, Gina asks when they got married, and Helvi says it's only been 1 day, so they're newlyweds. Listening to all this talk, Ziria was completely embarrassed and covering her mouth trying to calm down. Then Gina asks Ziria which one of them would fight first, but Helvi didn't understand this discussion. And after a little smile, Helvi says the two of them need to come at the same time, or they won't even have the opportunity to try. This puts the two on guard, and they ask if she's sure about that. But to this question, Helvi only says that they are far too different in strength. In the end, because she exudes such confidence, they agree to fight together. However, if they win, they'll want an extra prize. Without even knowing the prize, Helvi agrees, because it's impossible for her to lose. And after she says that, Gina says the prize they want is for Theo to give them a kiss. Yes, she had the courage to say that. Hearing this, Helvi ends up releasing some of her bloodlust, which scares the two of them. Now that she knows they want to steal Theo from her, she says she doesn't know if she'll be able to control herself, and just hopes they won't die. And so they finally begin this fight. Gina comes straight at her, and casts a steel spell that covers her body. Then she prepares her fist and strikes Helvi directly. The steel magic is so strong that it could destroy any armor, and if it hit any part of the body directly, the person wouldn't be safe. This was normal, until she saw that Helvi remained in the same place, using only one hand to hold her fist. This made no sense. It was a perfect blow, is what Gina couldn't stop thinking. Helvi even compliments the punch, as it was stronger than expected, but Gina says that even so, she didn't move an inch. And taking advantage of Helvi seeming to have lowered her guard, she lands another blow and warns her not to let her guard down. Gina admits that this wasn't such a powerful blow, but if it hit her stomach, she could faint. However, Helvi defended herself masterfully again. She tries to move her hand which Helvi was holding, and in the meantime she begins to explain that she already annihilated a demon turtle that used this same magic, and Gina says she's never heard of her. And Helvi says that's obvious because she annihilated it, and by annihilating, she means exterminating. She finished off all the turtles, so she says their shells were hard and fun to break. In comparison, Gina's hands are extremely soft, and saying this, she begins to squeeze until Gina screams in pain and falls to her knees. After that, she says she's just getting started, as she hasn't even broken her fingers yet. In this way, Gina realizes she needs to get out of there quickly, and desperately asks for help, and shouts for Ziria. Helvi doesn't understand anything, but Ziria hears her call, and begins to cast her magic, but soon warns that it will hurt a little. But without caring about getting hurt, Gina just asks her to hurry up, and then she casts a wind blade magic. This makes Helvi dodge, consequently releasing Gina, who is the only one hit in the process. She asks her to take it easy, but Ziria just says that the important thing is that she freed her, so she should be grateful. Even Gina's metallization spell being strong enough to withstand sword blows, Ziria's wind magic can cut through it like butter. And appearing right behind Theo, Helvi says she's glad her clothes weren't cut, or she would be providing another form of stimulus for Theo. Embarrassed, he says he would have looked away if that had happened, and Helvi says it's a good thing they weren't cut then, since she doesn't want Theo to take his eyes off her. With that, they start getting into a little couple vibe and forget they were in the middle of a battle. Seeing that, the girls start getting annoyed because they were flirting again. Noticing this, Helvi apologizes to them and returns to the battle, saying she feels great now, enough to hold back and kill them both. And so, Ziria says she will take over the battle now, and Gina steps aside. With her staff in hand, Ziria begins to cast the most powerful spell she has learned so far. And because it needs time to complete, she asks Helvi, who claimed to be the strongest in the world, not to attack her until her spell is ready. And without caring about that, she agrees to wait. With that, Ziria thanks her and focuses back on her spell, even annoyed that Helvi agreed so easily. And then the spell is completed. However, Ziria asks Gina if it's really safe to cast this on Helvi, but she says it's okay, because she doesn't imagine she'll die from it. So, even though nervous, she casts it, and asks Helvi to do her best not to die. And the extreme pressure of gravity is applied, gravity magic. No matter how tough or massive the enemy may be, it will be crushed to death, and even Ziria feeling sick using this spell for the first time on a person, which would make it even more powerful for not being able to control, has zero result on Helvi, who only stood in admiration for her being able to use such magic. Ziria could hardly believe she was perfectly calm, and even asked if she had actually been hit by the magic. And Helvi said yes, she definitely was hit, and now her weight has indeed been increased hundreds of times. However, the answer to her confusion is simple. Her magic simply wasn't enough, and if she wanted to bring her to her knees, she would need to be thousands of hundreds of times heavier. And so, Ziria reaches her limit, and she herself falls to her knees from exhaustion, and thus also loses as she can't fight anymore. With that, Helvi decides to apply her punishment, and Ziria only asks that it not be too painful. And with a snap of her fingers, she invokes gravity magic on both girls. But on Gina, she applies more pressure, because she was trying to escape using magical reinforcement. Theo then approaches and asks Helvi if she's done, and she says yes because as he can see, she came out absolutely victorious. And Gina, seeking Theo's kindness, asks him to help them out of this. But Theo asks them to hold on a little longer, as they need to be punished for challenging his wife to a fight. Suddenly, when Theo turns to Helvi, she steals a kiss from him in front of the two. And that's where we stop for now. Until next time,